Good afternoon, everybody. We are here for Buffyverse the continuation. Welcome. I'm super excited about this. It's a big honor, and we're here with author Lily Anderson, who most relevantly, author of the upcoming Big Bad, a very exciting alternate universe Buffy story that I cannot wait to get my hands on. And we are here with Sarah, is it Gailey, Sarah? Sarah Gailey, who has been penning a equally interesting alternate universe version comic for Boom Studios, The Vampire Slayer. Not Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
The Vampire Slayer.
The Vampire Slayer. Now, there's more to that. So Sarah is a Hugo Award-winning novelist, author, comic writer, who also specializes in short stories and poems. Is that right?
Just whatever they let me write, I read it.
They're very fancy. I don't know why I'm here.
But some of your other comic work has been with Boom as well, and you did Eat the Rich, and you also worked on the Steven Universe books.
That's right.
Right? And there's a lot of overlap with that fandom and this one.
I would also say a lot of overlapping content.
Really?
No, that was a very dumb joke.
Well, I haven't read those comics, so I was ready to believe you. Can anybody hear me? Because I can't hear myself. Okay. I might be fine without the mic, too. And then Lily has written a number of novels. You wrote The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You, and you wrote Not Now, Not Ever, and Undead Girl Gang.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled some of those names because all of those could be Buffy episode titles. You also had a quote that I found when I was looking into your work. And so it's literally, it's just from your website, but I found that you said that my books are about snarky girls and emotional intelligence and sometimes monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like you might have been writing Buffy before you started writing Buffy, and so I do want to hear some more about that. So I'm going to get us started with a couple questions, and then I definitely want to pivot to audience questions. But the first thing I really want to know, and you can take turns or you can answer together, but I would love to know, like maybe an every other word thing since you promised to answer in one-word answers.
I think that makes sense.
I really would love to know, and I love to ask this question of anybody who's doing work in the Buffyverse, because first of all, how happy are we that the Buffyverse is alive? Like, you are both doing amazing things right now, and it's 25 years later.
Incredible.
So the first thing I wanted to ask is, what's your relationship with Buffy? What's your story? How did you get where you are to be playing in this sandbox? Do you want to go first, Lily?
Sure, yeah. I got to Buffy slightly late because it was a show my dad watched. And I was like, I don't know about this. I don't trust it. So I caught season 6. And that's what converted me because Spike convinced me that I needed to watch the show. So, yeah. So I backtracked from the beginning, watched through all of it, and then kind of haven't stopped watching it since. And was really into all of the extended canon already. I really loved the original tie-in novels, like Christopher Golden books. And the comics, the second season 8 came out. I was at the comic book store for that. So I've always been, I have been there from the beginning, but I, as a little kid, had the original movie on VHS. So there are definitely winks to the original movie in Big Bad. There's a mention of Oliver Pike because I think it's a crime that he's never been mentioned on the show.
Never.
It's rude.
Snipped right out, yeah. I agree. The fans, the movie had a lot of fans. I have met people who actually say that they liked the movie so much that they refused to watch the show.
Wow.
Isn't that insane? Because for me, I was like, I actually oddly came in season, but not while it was airing. I was introduced through season 6, so it's fun to like go back and build the pieces together. But to me, the movie's always been like, oh, it's there. But I'm a big fan of the show, so I love to hear when people are like, no, it's all there. It all matters.
Right, and it counts. There's like a comic book that is
the origin.
The origin, which is just the entire continuity of the movie with a slightly different watcher. And I think that's great. I love it, and I wish that they had found a way to just replace Christy Swanson with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sarah, what is your journey to Buffy?
I wish that I could say that Spike was my Buffy gateway because he definitely lingers in my heart, always. Buffy was kind of my forbidden childhood show. My parents would have friends come over to hang out, and they would give me the boot and be like, we need to talk about things that we don't want you hearing about at the whatever tender age I was. And so I would go and like scamper off and do things that I didn't want adults to know I was doing. Because I was like, this goes both ways. Like, you don't want me to know what you're doing, I don't want you to know what I'm doing. Perfect. There's gonna be no accountability for me. And I remember sitting on the floor of my parents' bedroom, they had this old TV in their bedroom, and I was like, I can watch anything right now, they can't stop me, and they will not know. And I was channel surfing, and I landed on Buffy, and I was like, this looks scary. This looks like there might be a spooky monster that someone much older than me would say I'm not ready to see, so yeah, I want to watch it. And I ended up having Buffy kind of be my like sneak off show for a while. Of course, much later, I mentioned this to my mom, and she was like, I would not have cared. You were more than old enough to watch Buffy. And I was like, well, your rules didn't make any sense to me. But yeah, I got in while it was still airing live. I remember being completely floored by the action, especially. I love action. I love great stunts. At the time, I wouldn't have been able to articulate that. I would have just been like, I like it when the girls hit each other, which kind of still the same. Doing a lot of good work in AEW, I think. But I was just hypnotized by this. I was like, she's got so many cool moves. I want to have cool moves. And now, rewatching as an adult, I have a lot of respect for that childhood perspective because the stunts were phenomenal. And at that time on television, you didn't really get to see young girls taking and delivering real blows the way that that show delivered. On top of everything else, I think it just really opened my eyes to how much I like watching the girls hit each other, you know?
Very good life lesson. Yeah, I love that, but wonderful answers from both of you. I do think that to work in this fandom, you do have to have a relationship with it, like to work in this universe. Like it's a dense material, and just from what I've seen both of you deliver, I could tell that you had a connection. So now I know that there's been a lot, it's been a really strange time for publishing, and with COVID delays and announcements, and so Sarah, your book started in the spring, and Lily, your book doesn't come out until September. So how long have you been like sitting on these projects? Did they pick up when things were picking up, or have you been? Is this a year later than it was supposed to be? I mean, I'm just so excited it's here.
Yeah, Big Bad, I definitely wrote early last year. So we were sort of in talks about it late 2020. Because publishing didn't stop during lockdown, but it did sort of slow down and was largely hypothetical, where it was like, well, if the world exists, then you should write a book, and it could be something like this. Yeah, but it didn't get moved or anything, which was nice. But I think it's part of why we pushed the release so far, where it was like, we'll put it in September, and hopefully things will be good then.
Right.
Because it's been done much longer than that.
Well, that's good, okay. Because I know comics were very impacted, so did this have an impact on you?
You know what's funny? I've been very fortunate in my comics writing to have all of the COVID impact be on the very, very front end. So if I pitch a project to my comics publisher, I can expect COVID delays to have an impact on that, which is kind of fine for me because I also write in traditional publishing. So I'll sort of send my little child idea off to boarding school at Boom, and then hang out with my other book for a while, and then they'll come back and say, okay, you know, maybe we do want this project. In terms of the actual writing and publication for Buffy, I know that I'm completely unique in feeling like my relationship with time in the last few years has changed quite a bit, but it's felt like it's happening all at once. Boom approached me about writing Buffy. I said yes. We did some negotiations around the contract. This was late last year. And then I got started writing, and I kind of just didn't stop writing. Like, Buffy was all that my brain wanted to engage with, which is very understandable because everything else is less fun to engage with than Buffy.
Relatable.
Yeah. And so I've sort of been swimming in this universe for the last few months, just writing script after script after script. And as a result, I looked up and all of a sudden one was coming out. And I was like, hang on, is that already happening? It's really been the reverse of what's happening in the rest of publishing right now, I think.
That's fantastic, though. I'm so glad. How many? So there are, I think 3 are out now. Is that right?
The third one, I want to say the third one just came out. Or
Okay.
stuff came out.
I know I haven't read it yet, but I thought it was either this week or the coming week. But so, is it a maxi series? Is it an ongoing, or does your target 12? What are you for the Vampire Slayer?
I can tell you 12 for sure.
Okay, that's great. And I'll just keep buying them to make sure that happens.
Please do. Buy one for everyone you know. Put them in the vents in this hotel.
Yes, yes.
Let me keep writing this. I'm so excited about this story.
So you answered a bit of my next question in this answer that you gave. I was going to ask both of you, how did these concepts come to be? Were they your personal pitches, or were you assigned them? And if so, what were the meetings like to brainstorm? Because both of these are just incredibly unique concepts.
I've been wondering this about Big Bad too. I want to know. I've just been wanting to drink your brain juices since I read it.
I want to give them to you. So Big Bad because, now Fox is owned by Disney and Disney is our lord. The way that their IP properties or intellectual properties work is that they'll come up with a little snack-sized idea and send it out to authors they want to work with. And since I've worked with them in the past on other projects, they were like, hey, you really like Buffy, right? And I was like, well, about half of my books could just be Buffy episodes, and I changed all the names in. So yes, and they're like, what do you think about doing a Buffy Suicide Squad? And I was like, yes.
Is that literally how they pitched it to you?
Pitch was
Oh my gosh.
Buffy Suicide Squad. And then they were like, do whatever you want with that. And so I wrote what I thought would immediately be shut down. I wrote my blue sky. I'm like, here's every villain that I like, and I'm gonna kill some of them, and it's gonna open with Warren dying. How do you feel about that? And they were like, yeah, great, here you go. Here's money. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're letting me do it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, there are romantic ships in it that I was like, I've never seen these before, let's do it. Let's, have a lot of on-the-page queer romance. And they were
fantastic.
like, yeah, great, do it. So yeah, that was, I didn't think they'd let me, and then I got to just sit down and write it.
I mean, I'm telling you, the concept, I'm going to probably find time to read this tonight, like I am. And Sarah, what about you? So it sounded like you were assigned it on some level, but what part of the story, were you tapped or did you pitch?
Yeah, I got a very broad, opening to the conversation. Boom kind of said to me, would you be interested in writing Buffy? And after I stopped screaming and hyperventilating, I said, well, yes, I think I might be interested in that. And then they said, what do you want to write? Here's some thoughts that we have. And they very thoughtfully were like, here's the multiverse thing that we've been working in. If you want to do something in there, you can. If you want to continue one of the existing stories, you can. What are your thoughts? And I looked at the word multiverse in my inbox, and I said to myself, that kind of sounds like it could be literally anything. And so I came back and said, well, I'm interested in writing about, this story with this new Slayer, and how that would affect the dynamics of the group. And they said, that sounds great. And I had a similar experience to Lily where I said, well, that sounds great. What else might sound great? And I sort of sat down and made a list of all the things that would sound great to me and be fun for me to write and for me to experience in this universe. And the people who I love this fandom, the things that would be exciting and thrilling for them. And I made this big list, and I turned the list into an outline, and I said to Boom, okay, how much of this can we get away with? And they said, we think all of it. I did get the opportunity to write an obnoxiously long essay about one aspect of the series, explaining my thinking behind it, which they, again, very kindly said, oh, can you tell us a little bit more about what you think about this, just a sentence or two? And I said, here's my master's thesis on it. And since then, I've just been getting to really explore, like you said, these storylines that I didn't think were going to be possible. This is going to sound like a big dogleg of the topic, but I promise to connect. I'm growing plants from seeds for the first time right now, and I love my garden, but I've never grown plants from seeds before. And when I got these seeds, I looked at them and I said, this can't be right because this is a small rock I'm supposed to put in dirt and then I put water on it and then it makes food for me. And I know that cannot be how this works. So I planted a lot of seeds, like a lot, like too many. Because I was like, maybe one of these will turn into food for me. And they're all turning into food for me, so as a result now I have 12 pumpkin plants. And I have a similar thing going on with these comics where I planted all these seeds because I was like, surely they're going to say no to like 90% of this. And then they were like, yes. So now I have this incredibly lush garden of character work that I get to play around in. And it's a lot more rewarding than the pumpkin plants because I don't have to eat all these characters in a few months.
So, as we touched on a little bit, both Big Bad and the Vampire Slayer are alternate reality, like alternate universe stories, and I just am dying to know, with what you're allowed to spoil, and which I'm leaving you to be in charge of, what is the most exciting shakeup that you've gotten to come up with or gotten to write?
Oh, wow. Big Bad takes place in an alternate season 3, where instead of ascending, the mayor decides that he's just going to like come out as an evil warlock and turn off the sun, like Mr. Burns did in The Simpsons. And so he blocks out the sun, changes the name of the town from Sunnydale to Demondale, and opens the Hellmouth and is like, guess what, we're a demon sanctuary now. Humans can either run or be food. And so it was just really exciting to be like, oh, you're gonna let me destroy the town, fill it with demons, and then just see how Jonathan and Andrew can handle it. And, I put Anya in as someone who works at a juicery that caters mostly to vampires. And that was really, because just having a new setting that has all the familiar structures, like the bronze is there, but it's different. The magic box is there, but it's different. That was my favorite part. It's just like, oh, you know the settings. If you were walking through town in your mind, you're like, oh, I know this, but it's all wrong. And that's always my favorite thing in any Buffy episode is when they take the canon and are like, we mind erased everyone, or we were in an alternate dimension, or it's a dream. I love those the most because they're the things you love about the show, but you know that they're being played with.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil this, but I will say that the bronze in this dimension, the proprietor and bartender both show up and made me audibly scream. I was so delighted by what you did with the bronze in this book. It's very good. You should pick up those sample chapters.
It's a book that's all cameos, basically. Every chapter is like, and this person's here.
Well, I just think that's going to prove that it was lovingly rendered. Like,
yes.
It's written for the fans. I think that's too cool.
Definitely. It is something where I think if you weren't super familiar with the show, you could read it and be like, yeah, sure, fun, vampires. Because like all my books, it's really like, we're a community, and isn't that nice? And even bad guys love each other. But as a fan, it is just like, how many references can I fit into 300 pages? Every single thing. Like, I had a point where I was like, and Spike's gonna kick a cup, and my editor was like, shouldn't that be a Double Meat Palace cup? And I was like, you're right, it should be! And so now it is.
That's a good editor.
I mean, she's the best.
What about you, Sarah? What's a shakeup you're allowed to share?
I'm going to keep it broad because it's still early in the launch of the series and I don't want to spoil stuff for people. Thematically, I took a similar moment of entry into the series where I decided that my pivot point for this universe and characters would be kind of shortly after graduation. Sort of during the summer after they graduate high school, Xander goes on that road trip that ends so disastrously. And I wanted to change the direction of the characters' lives over the next several years following that, imagining that they had the kind of support and community and connection that the villains in your book have, that they were learning how to love each other and themselves for who they are, and learning how to kind of drop some of the hostility that people in their late teens and early 20s can show each other reflexively. And I wanted to look at what would happen if these characters blossomed in that community and in that care, and were able to fully inhabit the people who they are, but still make bad choices because we make bad choices. And that's been so exciting and rewarding. It's a little nourishing to imagine an early college experience that doesn't involve the kind of horrible sniping drama that my own did.
That's fascinating because the wounds, the emotional wounds of just poor communication that puppeteer the events of season 4 are some of the hardest moments in the show to watch because you're so used to them being a community and suddenly they're not. So I just love that explanation.
It's the same thing, it's their community, and what if that community cared for itself and the people in it, even when they're messy, were trying to take good care of each other? My favorite thing.
And that's wonderful. That's a very surprising answer to that question. So I noticed that Lily has a history as a librarian. So that inspired me to ask both of you if there's any particular Buffy character that you identify with or that you have throughout the years.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly, like, I was a school librarian, and I'm sure that that was not inspired by Giles. I started watching Buffy when I was like 13 or 14, and then by 16 I started volunteering in libraries, so I'm sure it's just right there. But I'm also like a bit of an Anya, like, which is why she's one of the point of view characters in Big Bad, because for me Buffy was always sort of untouchably perfect, at least until later seasons. I think it's why the Marty Noxon years are so divisive, because she's like, Buffy's a mess, wouldn't you be? And I was like, yes, I get that. But before then, I was like, oh, she just like gets it. She gets it done. She's really capable. She has all these friends. And I was like, no, I feel more like Anya, who just says things because she's observing them. And people are like, why? Why would you say this aloud? And it's like, because it's true. People don't like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, very troubling to actually say things like they are. I mean, the like very young queer version of myself that lives inside of me immediately wanted to leap up and yell, Faith, be Faith, just because she was such a formative character for me. But I think realistically, I identify most with early seasons Giles, where I'm like, why can't people just do the stuff they're supposed to do? I'm really tired, everything needs organizing, and I don't have time to organize it because people keep on causing problems. So I'm gonna like put on my sweater vest and sit down and think about the days when I used to relate to Faith more than I do now.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is really, like, Ripper is just boy Faith. Like, why?
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot of feelings about Ripper.
Yeah. They need to take better care of Faith. Like, this is just something we need to address within the community. Why wasn't anyone taking care of Faith? She lived in a motel. She was a child.
She probably did not eat a vegetable
Oh, no.
the entire run of her time on the series. Like,
Right.
someone needed to sit her down and be like, all right, listen, gas station food cannot be the only food you eat. Have you had water in the last week?
Yeah, she got Joyce a Christmas present and, like, wasn't even invited to spend the night.
Disgraceful.
It is odd, especially because I watched it as like a contemporary age with the characters. So you think when you're 18, you think, oh, she's 18, she's on her own, whatever. But like the older I've gotten, that is one of the perspectives on the series that I've really gained, is exactly what you both said, which is like Faith. We're supposed to think that she's broken, that she's dark, that she's even unfixable for a while, we're supposed to think. Irredeemable, and yet you do watch this community, as you mentioned, utterly fail to step up and provide support.
She wants a parent so badly.
That she finds one in the mayor.
Yes,
That's how badly she
yeah.
wanted it.
I truly think that whether it was intentional or not, the show has some incredible things to say about the way predators prey on the vulnerable, and how vulnerability is something that's often masked by toughness. Some of the most vulnerable characters in the show are the ones who walk around punching stuff and yelling and say, look how tough I am. When I look at Spike, I'm like, someone needs to sit this young man down and say, would you like to live in a place that's not the cemetery? Like, would you like an apartment?
Do you want to talk about poetry? No one ever asks. And you know he does.
You know he does.
He has so many opinions. He's just a very, very soft boy. And yeah, no one takes care of him.
Speaking of Joyce's
And vampire.
hospitality.
Well, sure, the murdering.
You know, we've all done some murdering, though.
Wait, but Joyce was actually very
Hospitable.
hospitable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
For
and
Spike, she loved Spike.
Speaking of
Where
his
was that for
hospitality,
Faith?
Right.
They all could have watched Passions together.
Yeah.
so often he's just hanging out in that house, and I think it's because we're I think steered by the show often to go, this is him being creepy at Buffy. But hanging out with someone's mom and like talking to her about her interests and being very protective of her younger sibling is a very familial instinct. And I bet if anybody was willing to talk about poetry, it's those ladies.
Yeah, Dawn for sure.
Well, he's closer in age
Well, I
to
don't know about
Joyce.
Dawn, but Joyce would have.
Yeah.
Dawn wanted to talk about dance.
It's
The
true.
poetry of the body,
Right,
as our
right.
moderator, I'm sure will demonstrate for us.
Oh, no, don't, I thought we were gonna avoid that. Okay, so obviously this, 2022 is the 25th anniversary of Buffy, because time flies. So are there any special Easter eggs in your, like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst at saying these out loud. It's a great question when I get it out though. So, were either of your works a product of the 25th anniversary? And either way, is either work paying homage to the 25th anniversary in any special way or in any legacy anniversary way?
I don't think there's anything specific to this anniversary. I think like the machinations of Disney is probably very pointed. My book is the third novel of Buffy that they're going to put out this year.
Okay.
I'm sure that's part of it. For me, I wanted to make sure that part of what's happening in Big Bad is that the Suicide Squad is coming together to stop the Slayer. The Slayer is a season 1 Buffy who is caught in the wrong timeline. She is out of her own multiverse. She's sort of America Chavezing through different Big Bad realities and trying to destroy them all. And so I really wanted to have a season 1 Buffy dealing with the problems of a season 3 Sunnydale, just to see that growth of like, these are all people that she will eventually know and sometimes love, and she just has no idea, and especially being without her crew, without the rest of the Scoobies, she just doesn't know how to handle this much evil. And so I really wanted to make that clear of, she grows so much through the show, and I don't think we give her enough credit for that.
No.
Because when she shows up in Sunnydale, she's an entirely different person.
Yeah, I really love how you handled that. And I love this character being the big bad. It's just, she's always been the big bad from the perspective of all the bad guys in this series, and I love getting to see that. On my part, I think I'm not tailoring my work to the 25th anniversary, but I am in a huge way benefiting from the 25th anniversary, because Boom launched my run of Buffy comics in the 25th anniversary special issue, which wraps up some older storylines that had been developing, notably the Jeremy Lambert run of Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics, which I truly loved. And I was so fortunate to get to have the launch of my story in this special anniversary issue that Buffy fans were going to be paying a lot of attention to. So that rather than me marching out on the street with a little sandwich board saying, I'm reading Buffy now, I got to have these other voices helping to amplify that. So I'm just incredibly thankful to be given the opportunity.
I feel like you both, I really was interested in the fact that you both rewound to 1999. I mean, different parts of the year, but you both made a point to rewind to that year. And of course, our prom party tonight is party like it's 1999, so did we. And I was going to ask you about that, but I feel like you've given me such rich answers about why you chose the moments in the story that you did, that I think it's a coincidence they're the same year. Was there anything about the year?
Like, just culturally, it's just such a turning point. I mean, for me, just because of the age that I was, it was sort of like, because I was 10 that year. And so it was like the first year that I was like paying attention, or it was like, I was seeing Will Smith movies in the theater, and music was all for me. And
A lot of tie-in wraps.
yes, a huge.
Big year for tie-in
It's
wraps.
a good year for tie-in
It
wraps.
might be the best year for tie-in wraps.
Arguably.
And so, but within the context of the show and looking at what I wanted my character to be able to do, I was like, well, you have the internet, but it's not great. And, you have the Matrix, but not the sequels. And the Lord of the Rings is coming, so maybe you're reading the books, but they're not out yet. And so it was just this sort of precipice of like fandom culture and, everything else. It's just a great year for entertainment and a huge year for Buffy. I think seasons 3 and 4, like, it's a runaway train. Like, no skips. It's just all bangers. And so I wanted to insert my story into like the best timeline.
I really love that point of the character's development, because I think similar to the way we were a similar age in 1999, similar to the way that we kind of started paying attention, it felt like the characters in the show started paying attention to their circumstances in a really different way. It felt very developmentally appropriate, right? It's like now these characters are more adult and are facing different kinds of problems and different scales of problems, right? The monster of the week isn't always the focus as much as that has been in the past. And I think that taking advantage of that turning point in a character's development, it's the perfect moment to alter their ongoing story.
Yeah, and the mayor going into the initiative, really getting that macro lens of like what they do is affecting the world. And the thing about high school, both on the show and in your life, is that like what you do kind of affects like the 3 people around you. And so it's like they keep saving the world and no one knows. And so when you get to graduation day, it's like they're saving the world and everyone's like, look at them go! We're all part of this! Like, you know, Buffy with her little protector umbrella and, you know, a real acknowledgement that what they do matters. And I think that's huge for storytelling because that's what you want, is you want big stakes with a community.
Big stakes for big vampires.
Yeah.
Scale matters.
It does. Although, don't kill someone with a pencil.
Well, it's Dawn, you know, she's got a whole thing.
Willow did too. Now, speaking of just the launching point of Buffy and the point of 1999 is that the baseline metaphor, the pitch of Buffy, of course, is that high school is hell. Neither one of you has, now your Buffy is a high school age Buffy, and yours is just fresh out, but neither one of you is grounding your story in the high school.
Right, because life is hell.
Because life, as season 6 teaches us very well, that life is equally hell. So was that a challenge to operate outside of that, or was it an exciting to take a different path? And did either of you consider having it set in high school?
For me, it was really exciting because most of my books are young adult, so I spent a lot of time in high school for someone who was homeschooled for high school, like a real weirdo. And so Disney very specifically wanted this book to be for adults.
Okay.
And so making sure it wasn't set in a high school was part of that. It was like, in Big Bad, Sunnydale High School has been razed to the ground by the opening of the Hellmouth. They can't go back. There's no like, let's take a walk and see what's it. No, the library's not there, everything's gone. And so yeah, it was a nice challenge for me because normally I love a high school book because again, everything's right there, everything you eat. It's, you know, you eat there and you drink there and you do all the things and everyone you know is in one place, it's all contained. But yeah, I really wanted to, because I wanted the point to be the community at large.